So I've wondered over the years what the importance of the color purple was for royalty. If I was a king, I would wear red. I like red. I don't know why purple is so important. In the ancient world, purple was supposedly a difficult color to get. So Derek Gilbert asked me very long time ago, and I don't know if that video is still out. The significance of the rainbow flag having 6 colors instead of 7. You've heard of the acronym for all the colors in the rainbow, ROY-G-BIV, sort of an acronym, but it's a mnemonic. And I didn't elaborate because I would have really had to digress from the subject I was talking about anyway. And I probably, or most definitely wouldn't have done a good job at the time, so I didn't talk about it. But here we have a depiction of electromagnetic waveform, where the magnetic and the electronic, the EM radiation, is made up of 2 components, one horizontal and one vertical. And the x-axis is time. And the electromagnetic spectrum, from very high or very short wavelengths to very, very long wavelengths, corresponds to greater energy on the short wavelength side and lower energy here. That's why if you're looking at stars, if they're burning more coolly, they'll be more red, like Betelgeuse. And if they're burning very hot, they'll be more blue. Now, an example of a star that has a very hot burn is Rigel. And both of those, Betelgeuse and Rigel, are in Orion. But what is being depicted here is there's a very short section here inside this whole spectrum of wavelengths that human beings can see, they can perceive as light. So in this graph, you see that there's 6 colors, and here are the corresponding wavelengths for each one. Red being the longest wavelength, violet the shortest. You can go into ultraviolet, which is a little bit beyond this color. And this is the type of energy or type of energetic frequency that can strip electrons from atoms. And that's why it's called ionizing radiation. And the farther you go this way, the more ionizing it is, which is very bad for living things. One of the peculiarities of this color spectrum that always strikes me is that you can put it into a ring. I'm leaving a portion out here to make a point. And that ring is a smooth transition from red to violet, from the very longest wavelength to the very shortest. So your eyes are not playing tricks on you. You are just programmed to visualize a color that bridges this gap. Here's a rainbow flag. There's the red, and it ends with this violet. So I write the purple variations are absent because they can be made only by a mix of multiple wavelengths, specifically combinations of the lowest frequency red and the highest frequency blue. And that color is purple, and it's important because it's known as a non-spectral color, because there isn't any frequency that is purple. It's just a phenomenon that human beings have, where they can mix the two to come up with a different color. Here is the ring with purple at the top, at the head of the ring. Here's the strange continuous color wheel. And this color doesn't exist in a frequency, but we still can perceive this transition from low frequency to high right here. In the 17th century, Isaac Newton discovered that prisms could separate white light into colors, and he was the first to use the word spectrum, for Latin for appearance or apparition, and described the phenomenon in his book Optics. Newton divided the spectrum into 7 named colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. He chose the 7 colors out of a belief derived from ancient Greek sophists that there was a connection between the colors and musical notes and the known objects in the solar system and the days of the week. Stuart Eiskopf wrote that. And the reason I mention that is because I don't necessarily believe or agree with that. Here, I think Newton cared more about God's creation. My brother wrote this in his book, which I happen to have, red line version of one of his first edits of Temple at the Center of Time. David writes, the majority of Newton's work were theological. Newton produced 3 times more theological papers than scientific. These manuscripts consistently recorded Newton's belief in the author of creation as one and the same with the author of law and prophecy contained in the Bible. Newton saw that the natural world reflected the nature of the creator of the universe. It's interesting to note here that Newton's illustration of prismatic colors included the word purple at the end of the spectrum after indigo or violet. You see that here. Although Newton perhaps didn't realize that the 7th color was not a product of the refraction of white light, but one represented from the particular nature of human perception, he included purple in his illustration. By doing this, he represented a very profound concept that the colors from white light could be represented in a harmonious circuit, reflecting an important aspect of God. And I'll elaborate. This then is the message we have heard of him and declare unto you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. The nature of light reflects God in many aspects. Just as there are 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, God is Father, Son, the Word, and Spirit. This is he that came by water and blood, even Jesus Christ, not by water only, but by water and blood. And it is the Spirit that beareth witness, because the Spirit is truth. For there are 3 that bear record in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost. And these 3 are one. 1 John 5, 6-7. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. Various aspects of the phenomenon of light can be described by using 3 methods. First one is rays or vectors. The second is particles or corpuscles. And the third is waves. This is the whole visible spectrum together appears white. Light separated into its spectrum also reflects the nature of God. The non-spectral color purple, included in the harmonious color circuit, profoundly illustrates God's interaction with mankind. The unification of spectral colors into a continuous ring by the non-spectral combination of the highest visible frequency and the lowest is mirrored in the phenomenon of the aux circuit, which I described in my previous video. God wrote the 10 Commandments using a letter system that was holy to him with his own finger. It's also interesting to note that there's another reference to the idea of a circuit, even in the place in the Old Testament where God describes to Moses who he is in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus shall you say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. Very interesting. The circuit. I didn't mention what this writing system was. It's Phoenician. very similar to what is known as Proto-Hebrew. Also, important concept here is the idea of the cross. God's interaction with mankind. The most important thing is the cross. Everything starts and ends with the cross. Here's a representation of the script, 21 letters, 3 sets of 7, with the continuous spectrum of light around it, with the non-spectral color corresponding to the head, the cross. Purple has been considered to be a color of royalty for thousands of years. Purple, from the Greek porphyra, is the name of the Phoenician land of purple, Tyrian. David Flynn discussed the significance of the Phoenician city of Tyre in his book, Sidonia, the Secret Chronicles of Mars. The purple dye manufactured in classical antiquity from the mucus secreted by a spiny dimuric snail. The dye was greatly prized because the color did not easily fade, but instead became brighter with weathering and sunlight. In Rome, only the emperor could wear purple. In fact, Nero made the wearing of purple or sale of purple punishable by death. It's interesting to note that the construction of the veil that separates the holy place from the Holy of Holies in the temple represented the image of Christ, but not only in its specific coloring. The verse, as it appears in the Old Testament, happens to reflect the nature of a circuit. If you do look at 2 Chronicles 3:14, which is 3.1415, is also known as pi. It sounds maybe a bit like I'm stretching it, but I'm not. If you listen on a bit. And he made a veil of blue and purple and crimson and fine linen and wrought cherubims thereon. Blue, highest frequency of the visible spectrum, the first, the alpha, the aleph. Purple, the connection of the first and the last, the head of the circuit, the completion. And red, the lowest frequency of the visible spectrum, the last, the omega, the tav. And here's the high priest standing in front of the veil with the cherubim. Purple's in the center. Highest frequency, lowest frequency. Here it is at the head. The representation of God manifest on earth. Emmanuel, God with us. God with us. True royalty is to the connecting color purple as Christ is to the cross. The rainbow is a symbol that was turned inside out. We perceive it in the dimension that was lost at the Garden of Eden from our fallen world. But just as we are mortally confined to the surface of the earth, the rainbow is incomplete. If we ascend and look down at the refracting water droplets with the sun behind, the whole circle appears. The colors too represent the concept of a circuit, but only in the light of human perception, since it takes the human eye to construct the non-spectral color that joins, which is purple. We must look to the cross, the tav, the purple at the head of the circuit, and understand what it represents. The light circuit, as we perceive it, is a representation of Christ that was created for us, specifically perceptible only to us, and constructed by the author of everything created. It also symbolizes the gift he provided, a path to eternal existence in his presence brought about through his interaction in his creation with us.